18 carrier-based F-35Cs faced 31 Chinese fighters over the Taiwan Strait. Outnumbered nearly 2-1, the American pilots achieved the most lopsided air victory in carrier aviation history. August 24, 2025, Taiwan Strait, 95 nautical miles west of Taipei. At 2:34 p.m., the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group was conducting freedom of navigation operations in international waters when E-2D Advanced Hawkeye early warning aircraft detected a large formation of Chinese fighters departing from airbases in Fujian Province. The radar picture was unambiguous: 31 aircraft heading east at 450 knots and climbing to 35,000 feet. The formation consisted of 16 J-16 multi-role fighters, 10 J-10C fourth-generation aircraft, and 5 J-20 stealth fighters. Their mission, based on intercepted communications, was to intercept and force the American carrier group to withdraw from waters China considered its own. Aboard USS Abraham Lincoln, the Air Wing commander made immediate decisions: launch the alert fighters, get additional aircraft airborne, and prepare for potential combat. At 2:38 p.m., 18 F-35C Lightning II fighters were already airborne on combat air patrol or launching from the carrier's deck. The F-35C, the carrier variant of America's fifth-generation stealth fighter, represented the most advanced naval aviation technology in existence. Each aircraft, worth $115 million, carried 6 AIM-120D AMRAAM missiles internally to preserve stealth characteristics, plus 2 AIM-9X Sidewinder missiles on external pylons for close-range combat. The 18 F-35Cs, organized into 3 6-ship divisions, were vastly outnumbered by the approaching Chinese formation. Simple mathematics suggested the odds favored China nearly 2-1, but modern air combat isn't decided by numbers alone. Technology, training, tactics, and situational awareness matter more than raw quantity. And in every one of these dimensions, the American pilots held decisive advantages. At 2:45 p.m., the two formations were 120 nautical miles apart, closing at combined speeds exceeding 900 knots. The engagement would begin in approximately 8 minutes. At 2:47 p.m., the F-35C's AN/APG-81 AESA radars detected all 31 Chinese fighters at ranges exceeding 150 miles. The American pilots, benefiting from sensor fusion that combined radar, infrared, and electronic warfare data into a single integrated picture, could see the entire Chinese formation with perfect clarity. Each Chinese aircraft was tracked, identified, and assigned to specific F-35Cs for engagement. By contrast, the Chinese fighters, using their own radars at maximum power, detected nothing. The F-35C's stealth characteristics rendered them nearly invisible to conventional radar systems. At 2:50 p.m., the lead F-35C pilot, Commander Michael Torres, a 14-year Navy fighter pilot with combat experience over Syria and Iraq, received authorization from the Carrier Strike Group commander. Chinese fighters have crossed into Taiwanese airspace. Rules of engagement authorize defensive measures, weapons free. Torres, leading the first 6-ship division, made tactical decisions that would define the engagement. Prioritize the J-20 stealth fighters, they're the most capable threats. Second priority, J-16s. The J-10s are last. Coordinate fires to avoid wasting missiles on the same targets. At 2:52 p.m., the first volley launched. 18 F-35Cs fired 36 AIM-120D AMRAAM missiles from ranges between 80 and 100 nautical miles. The missiles, traveling at Mach 4, would reach their targets in approximately 90 seconds. The Chinese pilots, still unable to detect the F-35Cs, had no indication they were under attack until their missile warning systems activated. By then, 36 AMRAAMs were already inbound, and there was no time for coordinated defense. Should the F-35s engage at maximum range, or wait for closer, higher probability shots? Type A for beyond visual range engagement. Type B for waiting until closer. Comment your tactical reasoning. At 2:53 and 30 seconds, the first AMRAAMs struck home. 4 J-20 stealth fighters exploded within 10 seconds as 40-pound warheads detonated. China's most advanced aircraft, designed to compete with American fifth-generation fighters, were destroyed before they could employ their own weapons. The fifth J-20, its pilot executing desperate evasive maneuvers, evaded the first missile, but was struck by a second AMRAAM 15 seconds later. All 5 J-20s were destroyed. 0 survivors. The Chinese formation, having just lost its most capable element, dissolved into chaos. At 2:54 p.m., the second wave of AMRAAMs reached the J-16 formation. 12 missiles targeted 8 J-16s, with multiple missiles assigned to high-priority targets. 7 J-16s were destroyed immediately. The 8th aircraft, damaged by a near miss, lost control and entered a spin. The pilot ejected at 28,000 feet and survived. The remaining 8 J-16s, now aware they faced an invisible enemy, fired their own PL-15 missiles toward the general direction they believed the threats were located. 24 PL-15s launched, streaking toward empty airspace. The F-35Cs, positioned differently than the Chinese pilots assumed, were never threatened. At 2:55 p.m., the F-35Cs launched their second volley. 18 more AMRAAMs targeted the remaining J-16s and the 10 J-10C fighters. The Chinese pilots, now fully understanding they were being massacred by an opponent they couldn't see, attempted to flee. Some dove for low altitude, others turned back toward China at maximum speed. But the AMRAAMs, guided by the F-35's advanced sensors and data link systems, pursued relentlessly. At 2:56 p.m., 6 more J-16s were destroyed. The final J-16, its pilot executing a successful defensive maneuver, evaded 2 missiles and continued fleeing west. At 2:57 p.m., the J-10C formation, which had been trailing the main formation, became the F-35C's focus. The J-10Cs, less capable than the J-16s and J-20s, but still modern fourth-generation fighters, were attempting to position for missile shots, but they faced the same problem as their destroyed comrades. They couldn't detect the F-35Cs. At 2:58 p.m., 12 AMRAAMs launched from the F-35C's remaining internal missile inventory. 10 J-10Cs were destroyed within 90 seconds. The remaining Chinese aircraft, 7 J-10Cs and 1 damaged J-16, broke off engagement and fled west at maximum speed. Subscribe to Navy Mission now for the most detailed naval aviation analysis available. This is coverage that reveals modern carrier operations. At 3:00 p.m., Commander Torres made the tactical decision to pursue the fleeing Chinese aircraft. The F-35Cs, having expended their internal AMRAAM loads, still carried AIM-9X Sidewinder missiles on external pylons, but pursuit meant accepting increased fuel consumption and reduced stealth as the external weapons created larger radar signatures. Torres assessed the situation. 8 Chinese fighters were retreating. None posed immediate threat to the carrier. Fuel states were adequate for limited pursuit. At 3:01 p.m., he transmitted to his formation: pursue to 40 miles from Chinese coast, engage targets of opportunity, then break off and return to Marshall. The pursuing F-35Cs, now operating at higher speeds and with external weapons visible to Chinese radar, were finally detected by Chinese air defense systems. At 3:05 p.m., Chinese ground-based radar operators identified 18 contacts heading west, but by the time Chinese air defense commanders processed this information and positioned additional fighters to intercept, the F-35Cs had already closed on the fleeing aircraft. At 3:07 p.m., 6 F-35Cs engaged the remaining J-10Cs using AIM-9X Sidewinder missiles. The infrared-guided missiles, capable of extreme off-bore sight shots, didn't require the F-35Cs to position directly behind their targets. From ranges between 8 and 15 nautical miles, 6 Sidewinders launched. 5 struck their targets within 20 seconds. The remaining 2 J-10Cs, now only 35 miles from Chinese coastal airspace, accelerated to maximum speed and dove to low altitude. The F-35Cs, approaching their predetermined breakoff point and conscious of fuel considerations, allowed them to escape. At 3:10 p.m., the F-35Cs turned east and began their return transit to USS Abraham Lincoln. The engagement, from first missile launch to final shots, had lasted 18 minutes. In that time, 18 F-35Cs had engaged 31 Chinese fighters and destroyed 23. 8 Chinese aircraft escaped, 6 of them heavily damaged or critically low on fuel. Not a single F-35C had been hit. Not a single American pilot had been threatened. The most lopsided air-to-air engagement in carrier aviation history was complete. The final tally was devastating for China. 23 fighters destroyed, all 5 J-20s, 15 of 16 J-16s, and 8 of 10 J-10Cs. 21 pilots killed, 2 ejected and survived with injuries. And the strategic message was unambiguous. China's Air Force, despite numerical superiority and modern equipment, couldn't compete with American fifth-generation fighters operating from carriers. At 3:45 p.m., all 18 F-35Cs recovered aboard USS Abraham Lincoln. Fuel states were low but adequate. All aircraft returned without damage, and the pilots, exhausted from the intensity of combat, conducted detailed debriefs that would shape naval aviation tactics for years. Do you think stealth fighters have made conventional aircraft obsolete, or can numbers still overcome technology? Share your assessment below. For China, August 24th became a day of reckoning. The loss of 5 J-20 stealth fighters, aircraft that had cost billions to develop and which represented China's most advanced aviation technology, was catastrophic. Only 10 J-20s existed in operational service. Losing half the fleet in a single engagement devastated the program's credibility and China's confidence in its ability to challenge American air power. The 15 destroyed J-16s and 8 J-10Cs were also significant losses, representing over $2 billion in destroyed aircraft and irreplaceable pilot experience. Beijing's initial response was predictable denial. State media reported that a training accident had caused the loss of several aircraft, but the narrative collapsed within hours. Taiwanese radar operators had recorded the entire engagement and shared data with international media, intercepted Chinese military communications, leaked anonymously, confirmed the scale of the disaster, and by August 25th, even Chinese military leadership stopped defending the official story. Internally, Chinese Air Force commanders faced harsh questioning. How had 31 fighters been defeated by 18? Why had the J-20 stealth fighters failed to detect the F-35Cs? And most critically, what did this engagement reveal about China's ability to contest American naval power in the Western Pacific? The answers were sobering. American technology remained superior, Chinese tactics were inadequate, and the gap between Chinese capabilities and propaganda claims was dangerously wide. For the pilots of the 18 F-35Cs, August 24th became the defining moment of their careers. They had achieved air-to-air victories that previous generations of naval aviators dreamed about but rarely experienced. Commander Torres, who had coordinated the entire engagement while personally shooting down 3 J-16s, received the Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism. His wingmen and the other division leaders received Distinguished Flying Crosses, and every pilot involved received air medals for combat achievement. But the victory came with sobering recognition of what it meant. 21 Chinese pilots had been killed. Most were young men in their 20s and 30s with families. They had flown courageously against an enemy they never saw, executing orders from commanders who didn't understand the technological gap they faced. War, even one-sided war, creates casualties that extend beyond military statistics. The American pilots, while proud of their performance, understood the human cost of their victory. Strategically, the engagement reshaped perceptions throughout the Indo-Pacific. American allies, particularly Japan, South Korea, Australia, and Taiwan, gained confidence that U.S. security guarantees remained credible. Nations that had hedged their security policies between Washington and Beijing recalculated, recognizing that Chinese military power, while growing, remained inferior to American capabilities. And China, forced to acknowledge defeat, became more cautious in its military activities near Taiwan. The engagement also validated the F-35C program, which had faced years of criticism over costs and development delays. The $115 million per aircraft price tag, once controversial, now seemed justified. 18 F-35Cs had achieved what previous generations would have required 50 or more aircraft to accomplish. The force multiplier effect was undeniable, and allied nations with F-35 procurement programs accelerated their timelines, eager to acquire capabilities that had proven decisive in combat. For USS Abraham Lincoln's crew, the engagement demonstrated the carrier's continuing relevance in modern warfare. Critics had argued that aircraft carriers were obsolete in the age of anti-ship missiles and submarines. But August 24th proved that carriers, when equipped with advanced aircraft and supported by capable escorts, could project power and achieve objectives that no other platform could match. The carrier's flight deck, damaged by decades of arrested landings and catapult launches, had launched the 18 F-35Cs that had dominated the skies over the Taiwan Strait. As the sun set on August 24th, the Taiwan Strait was quiet. The Chinese formation that had threatened American forces was destroyed. The carrier strike group continued its freedom of navigation operation without further interference, and across the Western Pacific, military planners updated their assessments of the balance of power. The engagement had demonstrated that fifth-generation stealth, superior sensors, and well-trained pilots created advantages that numbers couldn't overcome. Now I want 3 perspectives from you. First, does this engagement prove that stealth technology has fundamentally changed air warfare, or will adversaries develop effective counters? Second, should the U.S. Navy maintain large carrier strike groups if 18 aircraft can achieve such decisive results? Third, what are the escalation risks when one side achieves such overwhelming tactical victories? Comment your detailed strategic analysis below. Your insights drive the conversations we have on Navy Mission. And if this breakdown of the most lopsided carrier air engagement in history gave you new understanding of fifth-generation naval aviation, prove it by hitting that like button, subscribing to Navy Mission, and turning on notifications. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and remember that in modern air combat, the side that sees first and shoots first usually wins.